Start then. So my name is Jacqueline Francis and I have a special guest, Maxine English, and I have a co-host, Ihu, thank you very much, and welcome to the International Consortium for Domestic Peace, our inaugural summit, Breaking the Chains of Domestic Peace. So joining with me today, as I said, is Ihu, and anything that you need to ask any questions, then Ihu would address those issues for you. And I will be sharing my topic today on gender equality, creating a healthy, happy relationship. My guest, Maxine, will also be sharing her experiences or experience of domestic abuse. And the idea of my session is to inspire women and girls, if they are or have been in relationships or pre-relationships, you know, to look out for the warning signs and what you do or can control your relationship and what happens afterwards once you've left a relationship. But before we start all of that, I just want to give some housekeeping, please, if you can just let me just get on with it. So ensure that you are muted while the session is going on. And if you have any questions or comments, put them in the chat box and we'll try to address them at the end of the session. Do please raise your hands. You know, if you're joining late, then I'll just reiterate, raise your hand if you'd like to speak. This is a space where if anyone decides to join us, that if you do want to say something and you think it's pertinent to the session, but you don't want it recorded, then of course, then we would just not record it. Please feel free, if anyone would like to take any notes, then please do so, and please share on our social media pages as well. So I can just tell you a little bit about us. It was founded by Ihu from Cedar Cube. She's an award-winning organisation that works towards family restoration, and it was conceived by an idea of bringing a group of women together to form an international network about domestic abuse and domestic abuse advocacy. And she decided to run a project that would bring hope and peace as well as empowerment to sufferers of domestic abuse during Domestic Abuse Awareness Month. So together, myself and some other women who are also advocates, Sandra E. Hawley, Dr. Kate Analu, Kiki Palin, Yuji Madiforo, Brenda Dempsey, Francesca Ford, myself and Faye, formed the International Consortium of formed the National Consortium for Domestic Peace, a group aimed at collectively bringing awareness and empowerment to sufferers of domestic abuse by providing practical help, education and signposting. So for those who've just joined in, I've just introduced myself and the guest and just said a little bit about what International Consortium for Domestic Peace is all about. So yes, so shall we get started? So thank you so much, Maxine, for joining us today. And
it's been a while.
I know it has been a while, hasn't it? But it's, I'm grateful that you've decided to jump on and share this experience with me, and in the hope also that you'll be able to help other people as well. So if you can just introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello everybody, my name's Maxine English, and I basically help people through fears, confidence, self-esteem issues, relationships, as well as going through people who have gone through domestic abuse. I've gone through it myself many different times in different ways. So I thought I'd come on today to help you out. Jackie kindly spoke to me last week and said, "You're on there so much, you haven't been on for a while, you need to come back." So here I am, and I thought, not only that, it'd be helpful because with the lockdown, a lot of people are stuck in situations at the minute. And I thought it's the best thing that I can do is actually to get the word out there and see what I can do to help.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. So what I'm going to do is, I have a few slides, but I think what I'll do so that I don't keep you sort of like hanging, I'm going to start off with you sharing your story. And then once you've completed your story, then I can share some of the slides to reinforce some of the actions or behaviours that's happened to you, just so that we can create this awareness. And during that period, I'll also be giving some examples and some evidence of specifically coercive control, because I don't think that's talked about enough. So yes, if you can go ahead and share what happened to you and how you dealt with it, what were the warning signs, and how are you today?
Okay. So mine started earlier than most people think. Mine started with my parents. The reason being is because my dad went through losing a couple of children. And with that, anytime he wasn't working, he drank. That's basically what he did. And by doing that, when he drank, he actually got quite violent. So as a child, I was sort of growing up, seeing that, feeling that, and going through that love, that guilt, that pain, that, every time he got drunk, I then got hands on me, because I'm a girl. Like when you're young, us girls, we don't keep our mouth shut.
Yeah.
And it's very much that any time that he was drinking, I didn't like it, I would then speak up, and I would then get a beating for it. So it was very much that it started at a very early age. And then I was given like money to say, look, I'm really sorry, I shouldn't have done that. Come and have a cuddle. So basically it was very much that, going in, feeling that scared, and then going, oh, it's okay, there you go, there's some money. So it was a bit of like a guilt thing going on that my dad went through over and over again over the space of many, many years. It started when I was around about 5, and it stopped when I was around about 16.
Wow, that's quite early. Yeah, definitely
Yeah,
early.
yeah. So I mean, it didn't happen all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd probably say it probably happened around about 4 or 5 times a year. So it wasn't like it was all the time, but I knew for a fact my dad was quite strict, and I knew for a fact that I couldn't speak out of place, because if I did, I'd have to run. So that's basically, I tried to behave myself as much as I possibly could, but you just do what you can do. Anyway, end up being that, when you grow up, you move out, you just want love and affection. Even though everything that had happened, I was still a daddy's girl.
Yeah.
I was very much that I just wanted the love and affection, because it kept being taken away from me because of what he kept doing. I just wanted him to love me. So basically with that, what I found is that even though he was doing that, I didn't hate him. I was waiting for the next good thing. So then basically what happened is when my dad passed away in 2005 in March, and I met this guy in May 2005. Now, hindsight's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I can see now the reasons why I chose him. Basically because it come down to that I just lost my dad, and I needed the love and affection that I'd missed. And obviously I was grieving at the time. Because I was helping mum out, it was very much that I didn't want to show my grief. And at the time I had a 2-year-old son. So it was very much that I'd lost my dad, and I felt, well, now I look at it, that I was looking to replace him, I suppose. And that's sort of basically what I did. But the first 6 months, it was a bit of a bumpy ride between the two of us. It was like, I was grieving. There was a lot of ups and downs of how my emotions were. I didn't want to get too close, but I didn't want to not get close enough. And you go through all these different things when it comes down to a new relationship. It came down to that things happened, and he moved in after 6 months. Basically from there, I then fell pregnant. And we had a daughter in 2006, and we got married in January 2007. So we had quite a quick wedding because, again, hindsight, where I had my son, I became a single parent after a year due to him cheating on me. So basically with that, it was like I didn't want to become a single parent again. So whatever happens, I was staying with him. We were going to get married and basically just, go through it that way. The thing is that what happened is that at the time, because it was so early in the relationship, I don't think either one of us was ready or in the right place. But at the time, circumstances, it just happened the way it did. So I just went with the flow. But he would, after we got married, everything was fine. But after we got married, it was like 6 months down the line. He started saying, he would talk to people, and he would say, yeah, our wedding day was all right. you know, I turned up, I had nothing better to do.
Oh.
And that was the first thing that he would say. So obviously then you're sitting and think, what do you mean by that? You know, we've got a daughter together, you know, you're being a stepdad to my son, you know, why would you turn around and say that? And then that started becoming a little bit more often. And then it would be, I would go and check the bank account because we had a joint bank account for the bills and stuff like that. We'll go and check the bank account and it'll be in the red, and I've just earned 700 quid that week. And I was like, well, I don't understand where that money's going. When I looked, he'd gone and spent it on game, and he's got loads and loads of games and stuff like that. So what he was doing was getting up at night time and going on, you know, on the Xbox or on the PlayStation. So basically with that, it was like we wasn't sort of like then sleeping in the same bed all the time, because it was very much that he wanted to go and do his own thing because it's the only time that the kids weren't around. And that's basically how it started. Then from there, I was like, well, if I'm not going to get the love and affection, and I started feeling a little bit down, a little bit depressed, a little bit about, you know, that I wasn't getting the love and affection, and I'd come home from work and he'd be on the PlayStation, and I'll go and do dinner, and he'll eat his dinner and he'll go back on the PlayStation.
Right.
And I'm like, well, hang on a minute, what about me? Where's my love and affection? So that sort of dwindled, and when that dwindles, you sort of lose that bond and that connection. And that's what started happening. So I then took on another 2 jobs, and I was working 7 days a week. I did that for 2.5 years. And I was working from like 6 in the morning till like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I didn't really see anybody. I didn't really see the kids. I didn't see my husband at the time. You know, it was like I wasn't getting anything at home. So the only way I could do it was put myself into work. But the more I worked, the more we spent. And it just roller coasted from that, really. And then basically when that happened, it was very much that, okay, so you're going to work all the time. I'm looking after the kids all the time. I want to go back to work. This was him. I want to go back to work, and, you know, do it that way. I was like, okay. So I pulled down one of my jobs, and he went back to work. Problem is, when he went back to work, because he wasn't happy in the relationship, he then started drinking. And when he drank, this was the first time that I didn't know, when he drank, he got violent. And I didn't know that his mum come up to me after and said, oh, you know, I'm quite surprised that he's drinking again. I was like, what do you mean? He went, oh, he used to be a really heavy drinker as a teenager, and he threatened me with a baseball bat. And that was his mother.
Wow, yeah.
And then it was like, okay, so now the barriers are up.
Yes.
Because obviously of what I've gone through with my dad.
Yeah.
And with them barriers being up, you know, you perhaps don't give the love and affection to somebody that you should.
Yeah, yeah.
Because then, you know, I come home from work one day and you could see he was drunk, and I walked into the kitchen. I just went, afternoon, walked into the kitchen, and he just come in and went, where have you been? Now, at the time, I was a chef. So I was in all my whites with all food down me. And I went, I've been at work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the first thing he did was punch me in the face.
Oh my goodness.
And that was the first time ever that he laid hands on me. And I said to him, what the hell do you think you're doing? You know, why are you doing this? What gives you the right to put your hands on me? And he said, who do you think you're speaking to? And he punched me in the face again. Now, basically, at the end of that beating that I got, he'd hit me. He'd got me on it in an arm lock, and he put me down on my knees, and he was punching me in the face, and my head was hitting the concrete floor in the kitchen.
Oh my goodness.
And at the time, my son was 5 years old, and he walked in and he saved my life, basically. He shouted at his dad, and his dad just snapped out of it, and basically just turned around and said, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I can't believe I've done this, went into the living room and just burst into tears. So now we come on to where I was a child. Now the guilt thing comes in, because obviously when it come down to my dad, he'd hit me, the next day say sorry, give me. We've then got the same scenario now, where he's hit me, he's gone into the living room, he's burst into tears. You know, we've been together like 3 years, his first time he's ever done this, and now all of a sudden he's done the same thing. So because of obviously you get the same feelings that you do as a father figure, it was very much, it was like, okay, he didn't really mean that, he loves me, And I gave him a cuddle. And he said to me, "You hate me." I went, "I don't hate you." I went, "Everybody makes mistakes. That's what I need to go to the hospital." So I drove myself to the hospital, but I took him with me. And the doctor turned around and said to me, "Who done this to you?" I went, "He did." And they turned around and said, "Wow, okay, so why is he here?" I said, "Because when he was beating me, he made me feel this small." I said, "I'm sitting here. If I'd have left him at home and I would have gone through all this myself, and then all that would have happened, I would have gone home, he would have said sorry, and that would have been the end of it. He needs to see the pain that he's putting me through. So he needs to sit here for hours in A&E with me. He needs to see how the doctors look at him and make him feel this big. He needs to go through the pain with me of what he's inflicted." So what I was trying to do is say to him, you know, this isn't right. And the doctor said to me, "What do you want to do?" I said, "He'll never do it again." And they give me scans. They said, "We're really, really surprised that you haven't got a fractured skull. But what he did do is he knocked out one of my teeth and broke a little bit of my jawbone." And he said, "Do you want to get the police involved?" And I said, "No, because at the end of the day, everybody deserves a second chance."
Yeah.
And that was my first instance because of obviously what I'd been through as a child.
Yeah.
So, you know, that was trust. Always the way. Can you still hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, sorry about this. Sorry guys, phone's ringing. As you're at home, it's always the way it happens. Yeah, so basically what happened after that is that, you know, we started getting a little bit on track, but it was like every time he raised his voice and every time that he got a bit aggressive, I see myself wincing.
Yes.
And I was like, well, the wincing that I'm doing, that's not normal. So then what happened is I then started building these barriers and going, "Do you know what? This is not really what I want." And I started shutting my love and affection down. And I was like, "Do you know what? I'm not sure whether I want this." But my biggest fear was, what about the children? You know, it's all right that he's only laid hands on me once in the space of like 4.5 years. It's not as though he's doing it again. The wincing is my fault, you know, and it's not as though that he's actually hit me. It's just that I'm wincing because of what's happened previously. So then I got it into my head that I was staying here for the children. So by staying here for the children, it was like, I don't want to be a single parent. All my fears came in. So that was another thing that happened, is obviously when it comes down to, oh, but the kids won't have a dad, and how is that going to affect them? How is it going to affect me? I'm not going to be able to go to work anymore. I'm going to have to stay home with the children. Can I handle that? Everything was just bombarding me, one thing after the other.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it got to the stage that he got a Dyson Hoover and he threw it at me. And he threw it at me so hard, it missed me because I jumped out of the way, but it actually scraped the carpet up. And there was a hole in the carpet.
Oh, wow.
It was about this big. It was
such force. Yeah.
such force. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think someone's trying to get hold of me.
Don't worry.
I know, my phone don't ever ring.
My daughter just tried to call me as I'm about to go on. I'm like, no, this is not the time.
No, it's probably the school knowing me. Yeah, so it ended up being that was such force. And after that, I just sort of completely shut down, and I just turned and said, look, I don't think that we should carry on doing this. You know, it's not the right time. It's, you know, it's not right. You know, I shouldn't have to go through this all the time. So we sort of had this agreement that, you know, we would stay in each other's lives, stay living now, and be with the kids, and see how it went. But I was then just working all the time. It was, you know, there was no love, there was no affection, there was no intimacy, there was nothing. But what I didn't know, because I then put myself into work, because that's my main thing that I do, is if I'm feeling down, I put myself into work. So it was very much what happened after that, is I didn't know that he started picking the kids up from school drunk as a skunk.
Oh no.
And I didn't know that. And it wasn't until I went to Southend with children on you know, went with all the other mums and everything else. We went out one Sunday, that I come home, and as I opened the door, all I could smell was smoke. Now, he was a smoker, but we never ever smoked in the house.
Right.
So my first thought was, what cheek. I've gone outside the house, and just think I've gone outside the house, you think it's right to smoke in the house. You know, you wait until I get in there. That was my first thought. It wasn't until I opened the porch door that there he is with, and we counted them, over 30 beer cans on the floor,
Oh my goodness.
cigarette butts put out in the carpet, and he was laying sprawled out across the sofa.
Oh my goodness.
And the fear that came up inside me, I was like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
But when you're in that situation, when you're in that moment, when you've been abused, when you're low, you're depressed, you've got anxiety, you've got self-esteem issues, whatever it is, you don't sit there and think, I'm just going to run away. That's not what you do. You freeze. And then everything's running through your mind. And the first thing I said to the kids was, go and take yourselves upstairs, you've got school in the morning.
Right, yeah.
And that's all I did.
Yeah.
And I just said, do it quietly. Let him sleep it off. He's asleep, he's unconscious, let him sleep it off. Because while he's asleep, he isn't coming anywhere near me. Kids are in bed asleep. I can then just go straight to bed, and everything will be fine. That's all I was thinking.
Yeah.
So I then went upstairs and I rang my brother and I said, I've got a situation. The other half's had a drink. I need you here right now. I've got a feeling something's going to go down. And that was the only conversation we had. He went, I'll be there in 20 minutes. I went, just be as quick as you can. My brother got there in 20 minutes and it was all done and dusted by then. Because what happened is my husband literally heard me on the phone, came up the stairs, looked at me and went, who are you on the phone for? Who are you on the phone to? I went, I'm on the phone to my brother. And he turned around and said to me, your brother's not going to help you this time.
Oh my goodness.
And I just felt the dread in my body. And he was standing in the doorway, and all I had behind me was the bed, the wardrobes, and the space around the bed. That's all there was. And he literally got hold of me by the neck, punched me in the face, and threw me across the room.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, at the time, I'd lost a lot of weight, so I was around about 8.5 stone, and he'd put on a lot of weight and gone to the gym and stuff like that, and he got up to about 15. So he was like quite a lot of muscle in me.
Yeah.
And from then, he literally just dragged me around that room like a rag doll. Punched me up against wardrobes, pulling me around by my hair. And in my head, all I was thinking, he's not going to put me down. I'm stronger than this. It's going to go the same as last time. He's going to snap out of it. He's going to sit there and cry. And, we're just going to leave it and we're just going to go our separate ways. That didn't happen. What did happen is every time I got up, he kicked me down. He stamped all over my body. He then turned me around and made me face the floor with his foot on the side of my head while punching me in the face. He was then also kicking me in the body. And then he stamped on my spine.
Oh my goodness.
And basically with that, I felt the massive crack. And I couldn't move. And I was like, oh my God, what's happened? When I looked to the door, got my son standing in the doorway. And because he'd seen it already, I mean, we're talking 3 years later, but he was 5 at the time, and he shouted out to his dad, don't touch my mum, this, that, and the other. But this time he just froze. And he stood in the doorway and he just froze. And my daughter at the time was 18, no, she was 3 years old. And she come running in, because obviously she heard me screaming. She come running into the bedroom, stood on the bed, put her hands on her hips and went, don't you touch my mum. 3 years old. No fear at all. Just got in there, just literally had to go at her dad, but she was like 1 foot away from him. It only took one hit from him and she would have been dead. So I knew then that my maternal instincts then kicked in. And then by kicking in, I then had to do something. Whether I had to bow down, whatever it was I had to do, I had to get him out of this room. So I dragged myself across the floor. My back was absolutely killing me. I was in so much pain. I leant myself up against the wall, and he just got hold of my hair, got hold of my head, and just constantly just punched me in the face. And I don't know whether anybody's ever had a feeling. Some people might have done that have been through this. And it might be a bit of a trigger, so if you don't want to listen, then obviously put your fingers in your ears. But when someone's hitting you so much and constantly, and you sit there and go, I'm not going to survive this. He punches me one more time, I'm gone. And I just looked over at my son standing there, And I just looked at him and I just said, I'm sorry. Because I knew that any more punching, that was it. And I just looked my husband in the eyes and I said to him, stop, don't kill me in front of the kids. And he stopped. He went, where's your car? Where's your car keys? I went downstairs. I had 2 bulbous eyes full of blood. I had blood coming from my ears. I had 2 fat lips. I had literally had, obviously they hadn't come up yet, but I had bruises all over my body. And the kids had to drag me to the bathroom. As he walked out, he took my phone. He ripped the phone out of the wall. He took my car and left me with nothing and just left me there. And the kids dragged me into the bathroom. And we called an ambulance. And the ambulance got there, and my brother got there at the same time. And the ambulance actually asked me where he's going. I went, I know where he's going. They said, but we need him back because he's drinking and he's had like 30 beers and he's driving and he could kill somebody. Now, when I was 11, my brother died in a drink driving accident. He was a passenger and he got killed and he was 16. So when they turned around and said that, I knew that I had to do something about it. I knew no matter what happened, put my feelings aside, I now needed to save all these other people that he was going to kill along the way of getting to his family in Lowestoft, which is going to be like a 3-hour drive.
Right.
So that's it, that kicked in. So I then got on the phone to him on his mobile from my brother's phone. And I told him I loved him. I told him to come back. And I told him we'll get through this. Not the fact is that I felt that, but I needed to get him off the road.
Yeah.
And then I got taken to hospital. But what happened is, even though I was in pain all over my body, but the adrenaline was running through my body, and all I was thinking about was the kids.
Yeah.
They literally scanned my head and my jaw and said, oh, you know, you're quite lucky, you've got concussion, but he's not broken anything. But you've got bruises all over your body. And I said, my back really, really hurts. They went, oh, that's fine, that's normal. I went, no, my back really does hurt. Then that's right, we'll give you some painkillers and morphine and everything else. And they sent me home. Oh, wow. It wasn't until 18 months later, after excruciating pain, going back to work, couldn't work as much as I did last time, took 3 months off of work. And every time I went back to work, I just got in lots and lots of pain. I was taking lots of painkillers. And I'd found out that the doctor gave me an MRI and he'd crushed 2 vertebrae in my spine.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So, you know.
18 months later.
18 months later.
That's a heck of a long time, and you would have been in some considerable pain.
Yeah. But I knew I had to keep going because of my children. You know, my daughter's got issues now because of the trauma. So has my son. My son's gone through mild PTSD and depression. He now doesn't have any friends. He doesn't go out. He doesn't do anything. I've got my daughter that's got anxiety disorder. She's got abandonment issues because he was her main caregiver because I was working. And it's like a death. I mean, because that night was the last time she saw him. Well, it's in 2011. So she's now 14 and she hasn't seen him since she was 3. She doesn't understand that the fact is that this is where all her issues are coming from. But she's now got ADHD, she's got Tourette's, she's got ODD. And the doctors did turn around and say to me, is that as they get older, the boys would normally go into recluse side and the girls would be, I'm not going to be a victim. And that's exactly how the children have turned out. Wow. And it's very hard because, you know, I know, even though, you know, I have to be there for both of them, but it's very hard because at the end of the day, you do everything you can for your children. You do what's best for your children.
Of course, yes.
But the guilt that I had, that I stayed with him, for them to see that was immense. Because I should have learned that first time. I should have, you know, and this is the thing, hindsight is a wonderful thing.
I know. And as you say, you know, when they apologize, you know, you want to give them that second chance, don't you? Maxine, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It's been powerful. I'd like to thank those people who have just joined us. Please feel free to, excuse me, put any comments in the chat box. If you want to ask any questions, Maxine, I'm sure you're happy to answer any questions. Yeah, I mean, at one point you gave me goosebumps. Do you know what I mean? You know, but I wanted to ask, what is there? What was the reason why you didn't want to be a single parent? Because I know there's a lot of stigma about being a single parent and raising children on your own. Why were you so adverse to trying to raise your children on their own, on your own?
I think it comes down to a lot of things that affect us in life come down from our childhood. And then obviously experiences and things that happen through our life, it then changes the way we perceive things and the way we act. So it's very much because when my son was one, and his dad walked away and went with somebody else, I see how the hurt and the pain that my son had when he did that, because he didn't see his dad again. He's never seen his dad again.
Right.
So, you know, it's very much that I've been through that once,
yeah,
and I couldn't do that to him again, and I couldn't do that to her. You know, so it wasn't all about me, it was about the children. And this is the thing, it's what a lot of people don't understand. It's like, you know, you think about the children, you think about what's best for them, but when you're in a domestic abuse situation, or when you're in a really bad relationship, or, you know, a marriage or anything like that, that is an excuse. And the reason being is because what happens is children are like sponges. We know this from the way they learn.
Yes, yes.
So, yeah, so they pick up on emotions, they pick up on anxiety, they pick up on stress, they pick up on unhappiness. So if you've not got a great relationship, don't think by staying in it that you are actually saving the children, because all you're doing is showing them this is how you have a relationship and this is what you're going to do.
Yes.
So all you're doing is you're then doing your relationship on to the next generation.
Yes. Yeah.
When if you stood up and gone, do you know what? I'm not going to put up with this relationship. I'm not going to handle this relationship. You know, it's not the best thing for them to see. It's not the best thing for them to see that my mum puts up with that, or my dad puts up with that if it's the other way around.
Yeah,
you know, yeah. And the fact if it's not a healthy relationship, then don't have it. It is as simple as that. Because what happens is, rather than having a couple that have got a really bad relationship and brings the kids up to say, look, this is how we act again with each other, we're against each other all the time, what you need to do is then be apart and have two happy families.
And absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And what were I mean, I don't know if you, well, I guess you may know, what were the repercussions of, did you get your husband at the time, did you get him arrested? What were the repercussions of his behavior towards you?
I put him in prison.
Okay, right.
Yeah. And it ended up being that because it wasn't just the fact is it was that, you know, he got reprimanded and he got taken into prison. Yeah, that is right. If it's not a healthy relationship, then it's simple, get rid of it. But sometimes people don't see that as easy because of children. So, you know, you should see it the opposite. So if you're thinking you're staying for something for children, if you're even thinking that, that's when you need to leave that relationship. Yeah, so the repercussions were, it wasn't just that he left it there. He would then ring my work 5 or 6 times, or he'd, you know, ring people up, friends and stuff like that, and see where I am, what I was doing. So he then began to harass me and then make fun of me. So I got him arrested again. And I kept getting him rearrested for harassment. Then I got an injunction against him. Then I moved house, moved jobs, moved the kids to schools. And I thought, you are not going to find us. And that's basically what I did. I just literally just stopped everything in my life and just changed everything. And it is hard to do. You know, it does. But you know what? I look at it now, that even though it was the worst day of my life, and it might have been the last day of my life, in retrospect, it was the best day of my life. And the reason being, because even though physically and emotionally it was really bad, and obviously what the kids have gone through is really bad, what I gained out of that, one, is not to put up with that anymore. 2, is think of the children in a different way. Obviously helping other people out of what they've gone through. And obviously doing what I do now, because I never would have actually done that if it would have happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh wow. Got a couple of, comments saying, you know, wow, it's like being overtaken by a demon. It wasn't your fault. And this is what we have to say to women or those affected by abuse, that it's not your fault. And you know, all the time, you know, women and girls, they tend to blame themselves, but, you know,
and I did do that, because
yeah,
it was like,
you
you know,
said,
was it
yeah,
that I was working too much? Is it that I didn't give him enough love and affection?
yeah,
Because he was a stay-at-home dad and I then went out to work because he wanted to bring up his daughter. You know, it was all these different things that you do blame yourself,
mm,
you know. And this is the reason why I wrote my book, because
yeah,
of all these things that I've gone through in my life. There's many, many different things. You know, it's very much that you don't realise that you're going through it until the end.
mm.
And then you sit back and you go, why didn't I just do that?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
just
but as
don't
I
think
said,
about it.
hindsight, isn't it? Hindsight.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, it's still not.
We have another question here, and it says, was there any signs that you are aware of today that you didn't see then before the beating started?
Absolutely. Back then I didn't think of it, but just the start of the emotional abuse, which is the, you know, the only reason why we got married, because it was something to do. You know, the only reason why I turned up is because we had a child. I had nothing better to do that day. That was the start. You know, and then and what happens, it rolls on from there, because if someone loves you and respects you, trusts you and wants to be with you, they will not treat you like rubbish.
Mm,
They will not act around you like you know, like you're nothing.
mm,
They will treat you with respect and love and affection, because when you're together, you're meant to be good for each other. You're meant to be better for each other. And you put everything into it. I mean, I look at it that life is like a jar. Relationships are like a jar. You know, your jar is empty, and then every day you both put something in it. And then what happens is, once you do that, your jar becomes full, and that's life. You know,
mm,
you enjoy life, you put everything into it. But when one stops doing that, and you've only got one lot of person doing it, it then becomes one-sided. Then that's when respect goes,
mm,
loyalty goes. You know, people start cheating. You know, people say, oh, the grass is greener on the other side. I wish I wasn't in this relationship. But
mm.
until you actually water your own grass, every grass is going to be greener than your own.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, I don't know. I mean, words fail me, really. I mean, I've heard your story before, do you know what I mean? So I shouldn't really be shocked by it, but I am, you know,
I suppose
hearing.
I've gone in a little bit more in depth this time than what I've done
Maybe,
before.
yeah,
Yeah, because it's like I wanted to explain to people that
yeah.
sometimes the reason why you put up with certain things is because of things that you've gone through as a child.
Mm,
You know, so you take them things with you into relationships, into friendships. You
mm.
know, and the reason why I put up with what I did with him is because of what I went through with my dad.
Yes, yeah.
And this is the thing. It's like, it's finding your core issues, finding your core problems.
Mm,
And when you go back, you know, whether, you know, a family split up, you know, you'll then find that the child will go, yeah, well, I don't want to get married because they don't work.
yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
it's very much that a lot of things that happen to you as a child,
Mm,
you know, comes into adulthood if you don't deal with it and don't sort it out. I mean, I've had counselling, you
mm,
know, I've been in counselling, I've had parenting classes, you
mm,
know, I've taken antidepressants, you know, I've been depressed, I've had, you know, felt like a recluse.
mm,
There's lots of things that I've done, and I'm not afraid to say that. And the reasons why I'm not afraid to say that, because it's okay.
mm. It
Because
is, yeah.
the reason why you feel like that is because you put up with so many things for so long.
Mm,
And that's your body's way of saying, I can't cope anymore. I
mm,
need help.
mm.
So
Yeah.
what you do, you then give that help.
And I think also the whole idea that we're having this summit or these events is to inspire women who maybe, as I said before, going through it and see how you have come out the other end. Do you know what I mean? Because what happened to you was, or you know, was horrendous. And but I want to talk about the children, you know, because a lot of people don't, you know, we talk, you know, the women talk about what's their experiences, but what about the children? What impact did it have on the children? And I know that you said that now as adults, or teens, I should say, they are teens, aren't they? They're having,
18 and 14 now.
yeah, yeah. So what type of counselling, is there counselling for young children, and how do you know, how do you get that information out of a young child?
Okay, so my children went to many different things. Obviously, I told the school what had happened.
Yeah.
They went to Mag's panel. Quorum got involved. I went to Women's Aid because they help out with, obviously, me as a person.
Mm,
The kids also had play therapy, had art therapy.
mm,
And then it was also, I went into parenting classes And the reason why I did that is to understand the children of what they're going through and how to understand them. So it was very much that a lot of things that I was doing, and I went into counselling myself as well, because it was like I wanted to be better for them. So there's lots of things that you can go for. I mean, you know, you've got counselling for yourselves, you've got counselling for the children, you know, you've always got places that you can go. But if you just ring, whether, you know, if you ring Women's Aid up for argument's sake, is they'll put you through to the right people. If you need somewhere to stay, it's like lockdown's been a massive thing at the moment. With through domestic abuse and stuff like that, that if you need somewhere to stay and it's quite urgent, don't ever think that you're alone. You know, if you can get to Women's Aid or even ring Women's Aid, just get out of the house, take your kids, get yourself sorted out, you know, make sure that you've got everything sorted, whether you've got a little bit of money on you, if you can get hold of money, making sure that you've got the kids and you say, right, this is what's happening, or whether you just do something on a whim. But once you go, don't change your mind and go back, because all it's going to cause is a repercussion.
Yeah, I think some things are easier said than done, because even during this COVID pandemic, and women have been left with their perpetrators, and they have contacted those organisations. There is not enough rooms or accommodation for them, and they have had to go back to, you know, I don't know if you can call it a home, but have to go back to live with the abuser. Yeah, you know, so it's heartbreaking to know that there's not enough facility, and the fact that we should have to have these facilities, to be perfectly honest. You know, and when I talk about abuse, I always try to bring in the men into it and think, well, you know, what makes a man think that it's okay? You know, and a lot of people say maybe because they've experienced themselves as a child.
So that's the next bit. That's what you go down the route of.
Yeah.
When I said to you, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. When you talk about, you know, knowing your childhood experiences and why you part with what you do, you need to go down to his root core experiences and what he's been through. With my dad, my dad came from a very strict dad who every time he did something wrong, used to beat him. And every time that my dad was at school and he done wrong, he then got the cane. So he was taught that hitting was the best scenario to obviously, you know, and that's basically what happened. And it's never right, but then you've got to go through their childhood. You've got to go through what they've been through.
Absolutely.
And if you actually can work that out and find out what the core is, that's when you can start helping people.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Let's have a look.
Sorry, before you go on, Jacqueline, I'm getting some questions from Facebook as well.
Okay.
So I've got someone here. He says, he or she says, "Hi, Maxine English. You are an inspiration. Well done, you. Can we just define and rephrase that a bad relationship is not only when people are physically abused, but also verbal and emotional abuse?"
Absolutely. And the thing is, that's where it starts. It doesn't normally start with someone, you know, just coming up to you and punching you. That's not what abuse is. You know, that's further down the line. You know, you've got someone, if they turn around and say that you can't go out with a friend, you know, or they stop you seeing family, or it ends up being that, you know, they've got all the money and you say, oh, I need to go down the shop, can you give me a tenner? Well, what do you need money for? You know, all that is part of abuse. You know, people stopping you doing certain things, it all comes down to that, and that's where it comes from. And that can stem from jealousy, possessiveness. You know, it all starts, but the red flags that you see first of all is someone being disrespectful, someone saying to you that you can't do something. A healthy relationship is the fact is that you complement each other. Exactly. Anything less than that is what's the point?
Yeah. Okay. Are there any more questions? Does anyone want to ask Maxine any questions? No? Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay. So excited to share my screen.
Quick, yeah.
Okay, so as I said to you before, my the whole idea of this is to see if we can get to a point where we can start creating these healthy relationships. And I've tried to devise, because, I mean, I've done slides simply because maybe that's the teacher in me, I don't know, because I'm used to creating resources, and I know that seeing things visually will also help the process as well, or maybe also help to move things on. So if I can start off with what
just a thing before that, Jackie, sorry. When you were saying about visual things, absolutely fantastic, but also the people that are going through domestic abuse, if you can, you know, certain people are not going to be able to do that. But also, if you can write things down, like your pros and cons, and see what's happening, or even start doing a diary, make sure obviously he doesn't find it.
Yeah,
but do a diary of anything that happens, because what happens is people's brains go, that's all right, it's only happened once or twice. But when you actually look at your diary and you read through it, actually it's happened like 6 times this month.
Yeah.
So, you know, always try and be a doer, long as it's not going to cause obviously issues.
Absolutely, and that's one thing that I've recommended. So if I could just give a quick definition according to CPS, I mean, you know, and any incident or pattern of incidents of controlling, coercive or threatening behaviour, violence or abuse between those aged 16 or over who are or have been intimate partners or family members, regardless of gender or sexuality. This can encompass, but is not limited to, the following types of abuse: psychological, physical, sexual, financial, and emotional. And I know that in the last 2 days, my colleagues have mentioned those things as well. Do you know what I mean? Those types of abuse as well. And, you know, and I think it's best to keep on reinforcing that. And also another thing that I wanted to point out is the fact that we talk a lot about abuse with intimate partners, but we must also talk about abuse within family members as well. And I guess that's where my experiences stem from with family members. And I remember, I mean, I'm one of 3 girls in my family. So, you know, we grew up, you know, same parents, same household, not steps or anything like that, you know. So it shocked me when I became ostracized by my own sisters, and I couldn't understand why, you know. And I know everyone was saying to me, there's something wrong, just like when you're in an intimate relationship, someone says to you, something's not right there, and you're defending it, you know, saying that things are fine. But for me, just quickly, you know, it came to a point where my siblings, even to this day, I don't even know how it started, ostracized me, and I have become estranged from them. And the psychological and emotional abuse that, I mean, first and foremost, I was in denial until I spoke to a psychotherapist, and I had to ask this professional person, you know, told them my story. Am I being abused? Is this abuse? And she said, yes, it was, simply because the way that they had treated me. You know, I didn't get invited anywhere. They didn't talk to me. You know, I just couldn't understand why. Until it got to a point where friends and families, when they were talking to me, I can hear my sisters' voices. You know, it was as if it were their words that were coming out of, you know, this person's mouth. So, you know, when we talk about intimate relationships where abuse takes place, it's not only in intimate relationships. And some women have also said that they can deal, I mean, I don't know, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, Maxine, but they can deal with the physical side of abuse because the bruises, they heal, but the emotional and the psychological stays with you for such a long period of time. You know, so,
That's
but I
the
mean,
hardest thing.
yeah.
It's like, even when we talked about when my husband threw the Hoover at me, or when he used to shout and I started wincing, you know, all that happens is when he starts doing that, you then go back to what he did last time, even though it was like a year ago, you still keep going back to that. And that's the thing, that's the abuse. You then goes round and round in your own head of what's going on. And for you to go through that as a young child, that would have come through to you as an adult and been so hard to trust anybody.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I think when I mean, I don't tell my story that often, and that's simply because people say to me, oh, oh, just go and talk to them. Do you know what I mean? Oh, you're making a mountain out of a molehill, you know.
Simple as that.
Do you know what I mean? And I'm thinking, but how can you talk to somebody if they don't want to talk to you? Do you know what I mean? How can you try to make amends? How can you find out what the root problem is or was in order for you to make amends if they're not talking to you? I mean, it got to a point where I even went to mediation, you know, got some mediation. And I have to laugh, because if I don't laugh, I will cry. You know, it's, you know, even after trying to sit down and explain, you know, what did I, because you start to think, well, what did I do wrong that my two sisters, you know, my bookends, you know, turned against me, you know, and I think, I mean, I know in my head exactly what it is, but they would obviously never come out and say what it is. And I think for me, when a lot of people say it's jealousy and then they explain why, and I think it's because I was the first one in my, I mean, I'm the second born, you know, so maybe it should have been my sister, my eldest, who went off to university first and she didn't. Maybe it should have been my sister. Yeah, it should, maybe it should have been my sister who bought her house and she didn't. Maybe I, you know, maybe because, you know, I became, I mean, I studied and became a teacher, you know, and, you know, all these things that I did. And I did this, you know, for my children to have a better way of life. So how can you condone me for doing that? You know, and, you know, just like yourself, Maxine, I mean, I thought, well, you know, there were days where I would be crying and I don't even know why I'm crying, you know, and you think, am I depressed? I don't know. But I think what it was is because I didn't want to put a label on it or anything like that.
It comes down to loneliness, for one. It's coming down to acceptance, because at the end of the day, it's like, you know, when you've got two sisters that are like being all lovely to each other and they're not being like to you, the acceptance is, what's wrong with me?
Exactly.
And that's what you do as a child. What's wrong with me? What have I done so wrong to be treated this way? Obviously, I'm a bad person. Obviously, I'm not worth talking to. And that's the thoughts and feelings you'd have as a child. But growing up, you know, you then, again, hindsight, we love this hindsight thing. You know, growing up, it's very much that we now realise, actually, it was to do with them. It was to do with how they felt and how insecure, because they had to bring you down to their level.
Absolutely.
To make themselves feel better.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And this is what's wrong with domestic abuse and that side of it as well, and emotional abuse, everything else. You normally find people that are going through any kind of abuse, you know, psychological, you know, physical, sexual, anything at all, it's because how they feel in themselves.
Yeah. And I think maybe that's why I talk a lot more about the coercive controlling behaviour, because it is controlling behaviour. It is, they were trying to get me to act and think the way that they wanted me to, do you know what I mean? To adhere to their beliefs and values. And I mean, from a young age anyway, I was never that type of person. So I don't know what made them think as an adult that I would do that anyway. You know, I would never be put in this, you know, inside this box or confined to doing things. I'd always want to explore, whereas they were all, both of them are actually quite similar. But I think what was quite interesting was my elder sister, who said nothing and left it to my younger sister to say everything. Now, if I was to tell you that,
you know why, don't you?
Sorry?
You know why though, don't you?
Why is that then?
Is because if your older sister was doing it, then it was like your mum would have turned around and said, you don't pick on your younger sisters. But if your younger sister done it, because she's younger, she'll get away with it. So that's a part of it. But it's also, it can come down the fact is that you like to go and explore and do stuff and make stuff and become something, and they don't. And because they're not like that, and as you said, they're quite similar. So they're like two peas in a pod. So they're always going to be like that, because you was the person that made them feel bad. You was the person that made them feel like rubbish and they weren't good enough. It might have been that your mum might have spoken to you slightly different to what she spoke to them on one day, on one particular instance. And from then, you was the favourite. You know, and that had to be changed. So there was a lot of different instances that if you go back and look about what happened, is it could have just took one thing that your mum might have said something really loving and your sister might have heard. And it's like, my mum doesn't say that to me. I now need to make her feel bad because I need to feel better.
I mean, it's interesting that you should say that, because I always kind of thought, well, I'm having a bit of therapy here now. I always thought that, you know, that my sisters were, I think because I was quite independent, and my sisters were treated or given gifts or whatever more so than I was. But, you know, we won't go into that. But if I
You
were to
did.
say
That's why.
yeah, I mean, if I were to say to you that I haven't, okay, we're coming up to Christmas now, I haven't had a Christmas meal in nearly 10 years. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not just saying that with family, you know, with my family members, I haven't been, or I have not been invited to sit down at someone's house or whatever for Christmas dinner. Do you know what I mean? So even though on Christmas Day I have sort of like brunch with my children, and then I wave them off to their respective aunties, you know. But don't get me wrong, I did try it once. I did try and go to their place for Christmas dinner, because they invited me, and I thought, okay, come on, be the bigger person, you know, you can do this. And they'll say, no, no, come. So I went, and I sat there, and
Enjoy it.
it was like I wasn't in the room.
Mm.
And I'm like, why did they invite me if they were not going to talk to me? Do you know what I mean? And I went because of the children, do you know what I mean? To make the children, come on, mum, come on, just come on. You know, I went, but I got there, and, you know.
You know why? Because it comes down to, yeah, but we tried. We did invite her. She's
I
the one
know,
that didn't feel comfortable.
exactly.
It's her fault. Again,
Exactly.
you became the problem.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And it's funny, because I did go ahead and, you know, I mean, this had been going on for years, and it just got to a point where I wrote an open letter to them, and that's the first time that I started to write. I was a co-author in a book, and I just started to write, and I wrote about forgiveness, because in order for me to move on, I had to learn how to forgive. Do you know what I mean? You know, but okay, that's another story. But I just wanted to say that, you know, that it's not always with an intimate partner, it is with family members. So on the back of this definition of coercive control, I do actually have a friend or an acquaintance who is a barrister. We worked ages ago, back in the day, you know, and his name is Brereton, and he practices exclusively in criminal defense, and he specializes in complex cases, including sexual offenses. So I've written my book, in my second book, The Relationship Jigsaw, I asked him if he can write a piece in there for me, just to explain what coercive control is, just so that I also can get a better understanding, and my readers can get a better understanding. And also, what are men saying? What are their excuses? So this is, if you don't mind, I'll just read what he has said. He defines coercive controlling behaviour is an intimate or family relationship was made a criminal offence in England and Wales by Section 76 of the Serious Criminal Act in 2015. The offence came into law on the 29th of December 2015. Essentially, this new offence has given the court the power to punish a defendant who is found guilty of having trapped a complainant in a controlling abusive relationship, especially a relationship in which the complainant may have been physically assaulted. The law says that in order to find a defendant guilty of the offence, the prosecution must prove that the defendant repeatedly or continuously engages in behaviour towards the complainant, that the behaviour is controlling or coercive, and at the time of the behaviour, the complainant and the defendant are personally connected, and the behaviour has a serious effect on the complainant, and that the defendant knows or ought to have known that the behaviour has a serious effect on the defendant. So your partner, of course, he knew what he was doing because it had an effect on you. It is important to note that in order to prove that the defendant and the complainant are personally connected, the prosecution must show that the defendant and the complainant are in an intimate or personal relationship, or that they have lived together and are either members of the same family, or they have previously been in an intimate relationship with each other. It is also important to note that in order to prove the defendant behaviour has a serious effect on the complainant, the prosecution must show that the defendant's behaviour causes the complainant to fear on at least 2 occasions that violence will be used against the complainant, or that the defendant's behaviour causes the complainant alarm or distress, which is substantially adverse effect on the complainant's day-to-day activity.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
And the reason being, there's one thing that I didn't do and I've always regretted it. That is, and this is it for everybody that's going through or been through or anything, you know, to do with any kind of abuse, is that if they do anything to you, make sure you report it. So it's like the first time that he hit me, I didn't report it. Even though I said to the doctor, because I didn't report it and I didn't, you know, put it down in writing and go to the police about it, it wasn't on record. So it was only on record to say that he'd only hit me the once, and that's the reason why he only got the amount of time that he did. Yeah. Apart from also the fact is because I didn't have a, you know, an X-ray on my back, and they didn't know straight away that he didn't get sent down for that either. So he only got sent down for ABH, aggravated vehicle taking, and because they found him in a pub when they found the car, it was completely smashed up. They found him in a pub, and because of that, they couldn't do him for drink driving either. So you know, it was very much that he should have got years, but he didn't. Right. But what I'm saying to people is exactly what you said that in your book, is that make sure that you either go and get counselling, sign yourself up to counselling, go and see the doctor, you know, get it done in writing. And the reason being is because even if you go and you say to the police, I want to do it, and then you drop charges, that doesn't matter. Yeah, it's still right. There. It's still there with doctors, with hospitals, with, you know, police and everything else. It's still recorded to say that incident happened. Yeah, and that's what I would say to people, is that even if it's something that, you know, you think, oh well, you know, it's happened, I'm just going to put up with it again. Just make sure you get that recorded, because it can make a massive difference if anything else goes down later. Absolutely.
Okay, so because he defends alleged perpetrators, I asked him this question: when you're defending the alleged abuser, what are some of the reasons they give for carrying out this type of behaviour against their partner? And his remark was that it is common for the defendant to deny that the behaviour which he or she is accused of ever happened. And in situations like those, unless the prosecution has documentary evidence, as you've just said, such as text messages or other forms of telephone recordings, it is more difficult for them to prove the offence. Another common reason given by a defendant in these circumstances is that he or she is not aware that his or her behaviour is controlling or coercive.
So basically, they've gone through it as children. They've been brought up in that area. They don't know any different.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Okay, so this is, I've just given a sort of like an outline just to clarify what coercive control is. And I think that we need to know all of these things, and partly, of course, physical abuse, so we can recognize these things, so that we can educate ourselves on these things, so that we can create awareness. And knowledge is power. And yesterday when I was listening to one of my colleagues, one of the guests says, you know, knowledge is power, yes, but only if it's applied. Do you know what I mean? So yes, you can have all of the information, you know, but you have to act upon it. You know, so here we have, under the umbrella of domestic violence, and I say this, and I've done this, and because it's for young children as well, teens as well, and that's simply because teens think that domestic abuse is just physical, and they have this image of some woman cowering in the corner being beaten, when it's so much more than that. And also, you know, the fact that it doesn't happen to young people, they think that it won't happen to them. So under this umbrella of domestic violence, and I think that's why I don't say violence, I don't say domestic violence, I say domestic abuse, because then it allows me to encompass everything. So as I said, you know, coercive control became a criminal offence in December 2015. And what comes under the umbrella of violent domestic abuse is FGM, female genital mutilation, digital abuse, forced marriages, threats and coercive behavior, emotional abuse, economic abuse, isolation, blaming or denying or minimizing what's going on. As you've just said yourself, Maxine, you know, you've illustrated these things already, do you know what I mean? Using children and demanding male privileges, rape, do you know what I mean? When it's not, when there's no consent or anything like that. So, you know, when I look at this, I can't see myself, I couldn't see myself in this, but then I can see the part where it says blaming and denying, because I had a lot of that, and the isolation, and we know that loneliness can kill people.
Well, we now know. A lot of people can see that now. Yeah.
We do know that. And it used to really get to me when I think, okay, we're talking about the older people being lonely. But here I am, I'm not an old person. I don't consider myself as an old person, but here I am, lonely. Do you know what I mean? Being isolated. And to protect my own personal well-being, I had to estrange myself so that I can function, because every day was the same. What did I do? How can I make amends? And so forth.
And Jacqueline, I just want to add to that. Faye said on Facebook, by the time physical abuse is experienced in an intimate relationship, most of it, not all, other forms of abuse would have been present. So she's saying that, by the time you actually go into the physical, you would have experienced financial abuse, emotional abuse, mental abuse. Some of those things would have been present as well.
Yeah, absolutely, because it doesn't come in isolation. We know that it doesn't come in isolation. And as you said, Maxine, sometimes at the beginning, it's the nuances, and and sometimes it can be quite subtle.
It's even the way that they speak to you and the way they react to you. When you've got someone, it's like all of a sudden they're sharp and you're like, oh, well, obviously he's in a bad mood. But then that becomes more often. And then they start talking down to you, and then they start taking the mick out of you and things like that in front of family. And this is where it all starts. You look at it as though it's just something so small. It's a way of looking at it that they're losing respect for you. Because for someone to do that, that's when the respect's going. And then when the respect goes, trust goes. And when the trust goes, that's when the fists start coming out. Something I do want to say before you go on, does anybody know about Clare's Law? You know about Clare's Law? Clare's Law. Yeah. So you've got Clare's Law. If anybody that's going through domestic abuse, or if anybody has got a new partner that you're not 100% sure at, you can actually go to the police and ask them to look into that person through Clare's Law. And then what happens is they will go through all their checks. It takes a few days, a couple of weeks, something like that. They go through all their checks to see if that person has actually been done or arrested or cautioned for any kind of violence or any kind of abuse. And then they come and tell you what that abuse was.
How effective is that? How do you think? Because we're in a time where where people are looking for partners. Do you know what I mean? On dating apps and so forth. And before they make a decision, they have to contact the police under Clare's Law.
I mean, you can't just go to someone and go, oh, I've got a new partner, can you check into it? Any chance, while you're there, as it's quiet and you've got nothing better to do right now. No, it's very much that if you're seeing them kind of things, or they're getting aggressive with you, or something's happening that's not quite right, then you can actually then go to the police and say, look, I'm in a new relationship, this has started happening, I'd like to put in place of Clare's Law and find out if there's any information of anything that's happened in the past before I get too involved. And then what they'll do is they'll get back to you, and they have to do that. But they don't tell you, they just say yes or no. And they may tell you what it is, but obviously they won't tell you no more than that. They've got to have some kind of confidentiality, but they do it due to obviously making sure that you're okay.
Of course, yes, definitely. Thanks for that. Okay, so let's move on. So this is an example. I just wanted to give an example of abuse, and this section is actually taken from my book, just so that I can highlight fiction against real life and how, you know, it can be emulated. And this woman, in the main character of my book, is called Valencia. She's 25, and I did that age group specifically because of that particular age group that is affected more. 16 to 25-year-olds who are affected more in terms of domestic abuse. Well, that's what they say anyway. But Valencia, age 25, met Jack, a charming, handsome guy. They had this whirlwind romance where Jack showered her with gifts and expensive flowers, which were followed by phone calls and texts telling her how much he liked her. Within a short space of time, Jack was declaring his love for her, which took Val by surprise. The next thing was she agreed to him moving in with her before long. But before long, things started to change. He embarrassed her in front of her friends. He insisted on driving her to work and collecting her. He would regularly turn up unexpectedly. He then started complaining about her friends and colleagues, making her feel guilty, texting her and calling, texting her and calling her names. Sorry, because this is trying to get this out of the way. Okay, and Val decided that she would start to spend less time at work and started working from home. He began to criticize her appearance and complained she was putting on weight, even though she was a size 10, 12. So this is a prime example of coercive and controlling behavior. As you say, it's when you start to change the way that you start to, that you've done things or you were doing things to accommodate them and to make them happy. And even yesterday when my colleague was talking about narcissistic behavior, and Yuji was saying, well, how can someone tell you that they love you and that they want to be with you and they've only known you a week? Do you know what I mean? Is that a warning sign? Is that a red flag? To say, well, look, I don't, this relationship is not going to be healthy. So for you, Maxine, when you, were in your relationship, did any of these, when you started to go out with your partner, did he start, sending you messages and I'm dying love, or was there any warning signs at the beginning, or were you just blinded by the fact that you just didn't want to have this single parentness?
All of it.
Yeah.
Looking at that is a prime example, because obviously you look at that, some people look at it and go, yeah, I know, it's really lovely to start with, though, perhaps he can change. But the thing is like, you've got the charming, handsome guy, which to start with is that you've just fallen in love with his looks and gone, oh, he's amazing, I'll put up with whatever you need. That's going to be your first fault. And obviously by it being a whirlwind romance, everything moves really quickly.
No.
So then obviously you're then going to start feeling love, and everything's going to be amazing. You're going to feel wanted. And then obviously the gifts and the flowers come in. Then the texts, and so not only have you got the gifts, you've then also got the emotional side, and you've got the connection that happens. And it's just basically like someone reeling you in. That's all they're doing, is just reeling you in. And then with that, and then comes down to him then moving in. That was really fast anyway, and I did exactly that with my husband. We met in the May. He moved in the August, and obviously I fell pregnant, and then within 18 months we got engaged, moved house, had a baby, and got married.
Yes, yeah.
So
I wrote about it, but I got I got quite a few kickbacks from this, because someone was saying to me, well, how can you write this book called Walk Quiet, Run Quick if you haven't experienced it yourself? And and that's why I made it a fictional book. Do you know what I mean? But the storylines are real, because you've just told me that yourself. The storylines are real. So I know I'm going to let you go soon. I'm going to let you go soon. We're coming to a close anyway soon. So,
but so we were saying about the answer to that, where the worst thing that she could have done was, it was nice for him to offer to take me to and from work, and basically with that, it would have been, oh, that's really lovely, he just wants to spend more time with me. But then when she actually stopped working and started working from home, that's when the worst thing that she could have done.
Yeah.
Because all that done was then giving the control that he's then literally got her in the house all day, every day.
Exactly.
And then from then, he would have got rid of friends, he would have got rid of family. Why would you want to go out with friends and family? You can just stay in here with me.
Exactly.
You know, and that was the be end all. That then after that would have been that he would have started hitting her.
Yeah. And, you know, I won't tell you what happens in my book because you have to go out and buy it. But, you know, it's so bizarre. Do you know what I mean? And I think what's interesting is that I'm going to give you a joke here. The other day, I made a connection with this guy. Do you know what I mean? And I thought, okay, let me get back out into the dating scene and see what's going on. And then this guy, we exchanged numbers, and then this guy, he sent me about 10 photos of himself. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then he sent a video, of himself singing a Bob Marley song that had no relevance. I don't know what relevance it had. I don't know. And then I said, I messaged back and I said, oh, what's with the pictures? And he goes, oh, I'm a photographer and so forth. And I said, well, you know, I was trying to say, don't send me any pictures, but I was trying to say it politely. But then he proceeded to send me another 5 pictures, you know, and then he went on to say later on in a conversation, because I kind of wanted to nip this in the bud. So we had a conversation and he said, I really like you. I think that we're good together. I love the way that you do this. I think I'm falling for you. I'm like, but you don't even know me. You do you know what I mean? You know, this is the first conversation that we're having. And for me, you know, even when Yuji was talking yesterday about narcissism and stuff like that, and I'm like, oh my God, have I got a narcissist on my hand? But you have to, I mean, I may be joking about it now, but the whole, like, because I know what I know now, you know, those red flags are there for me. And, you know, I can put those into place. Do you know what I mean? You know,
I completely understand where you're coming from, because it's like, you know, normally you'd think, oh, that's really lovely, and it's like he wants to spend time with me, and it's amazing. The fact is he feels so close to me already, and we've only got to meet each other, and you know, you feel so special. But because of doing what we do, it's like, no,
exactly.
That's not what you do.
Exactly. And that's where I want our young people, and for, you know, whoever's on this live at the moment and whoever's going to be watching it, but women and girls, this is what I want you to take on board by, you know, listening to our stories, listening to Maxine's story. You know, we've written our books. You know, we've written about it, we've spoken about it, we've shared our experiences. You know, we take every opportunity to get the information out there so that you could be armed with that knowledge and that you're able to apply it. You know,
and I agree with that, because it's like the reason why I wrote my book, I did it as my autobiography. It wasn't just about that particular thing that I told you about. I did my whole life, because, you know, you've got in there everything from bullying to rape to, you know, domestic abuse to, you know, all these different things. I'm not going to go through all of them, you have to buy the book. But there's like 10 different things in there. So basically with that, it's like, it's not just a book to go, well, there you go, read it. It's a book, as you said, it's to arm you to say, look, this is how it starts. This is what happened to me. These are the signs to look out for. And if you've been through it already, this is how to overcome it, and think positively, because a lot of people think that once their partner's gone or something's happened to them, their life's over. You know, you've got to keep that positive mindset, because no matter, you know, what I wrote in my book was, you may have broke my back, but you're never going to break my spirit. You know, because at the end of the day, he's out doing his own thing now. I'm the one that's left with a broken back. I'm the one that's left with 2 children, you know, that go through all the issues that they do. And then I could sit there and just be completely depressed day in, day out, and do nothing.
Yes.
But I decided to open my business. I decided to go out and coach other people. I decided to go and speak up on stage. You know, I won awards. I've got everything done so I can actually help other people to say, look, just because this has happened to you, it doesn't mean your life stops. This is when your life begins. Because this is when you find your own person.
Exactly.
And for anybody else that's not actually gone through domestic abuse yet, but actually is on the way to it, you know, these are your red flags. So stop before it gets that way. And if you sit there and think, yeah, but it's because I love him, do you love yourself more?
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard, but you know, you have to keep your spirits up. I've got a couple of scenarios, but I'm actually conscious that time is sort of like against us. So I'm just going to skip through some of those. And I just want to come to this page quickly. where we have two beautiful women here. Can you name these women? And what they have in common. So which one is a victim of abuse?
Are you asking me or just asking?
Well, I mean, anyone can answer if they want to, but while you're here, you know. I feel sometimes that I'm in the classroom. I feel actually as if I'm in the classroom and expecting
You're teaching me. Oh, hello.
Expecting my students to respond.
Yeah, is people that have gone through abuse go one of two ways, and you've got both instances there. You've got one that becomes a recluse, becomes really subdued, really, you know, goes within themselves and becomes really shy and doesn't want to face the world. But then you've got the other one that goes, you know what, I'm not going to be put down, I'm going to keep going. This is me, I'm a strong woman. Yeah. So, you know, you've got two different ways of looking at it. Yeah. But I mean,
both of them have. And, you know, Mel B, everybody, well, not, I don't know about everybody, but in the UK would know that she's from the Spice Girls. And, you know, she's a celebrity. She's lived this very high life. So one would think, you know, how can she live this high life and, you know, be a victim of abuse? But what we're trying to say, Maxine, is the fact that it can happen to anybody. It doesn't matter who you are. This is Mel B, a celebrity. This is a lady, she's a professional photographer, you know, and she was nearly killed by her husband, you know, and she nearly died. You know, so it doesn't matter what race you are, what color you are, what you do as a, you know, in terms of your work, you know, it can happen to anybody. So for this section here, these are some true real life experiences of teens who I have spoken to, and it was really, really heartbreaking to hear what they had to say. I'm just going to read a couple of them.
That first one, I've gone through that one.
I was at school, I was 16 years old, my boyfriend and I had playful pillow fights, but the pillow fights started to get more violent and aggressive. I told my mum, but she said it was my fault. And when that young lady told me that, you know, and the fact that they were doing pillow fights, it was the fact that her boyfriend was being egged on by his mates, saying, you have to do this. So it was peer pressure by the boyfriend to abuse his girlfriend. But because the mum didn't know she was in a relationship, she blamed the daughter. Well, who told you at such a young age to be in a relationship? Do you know what I mean? It's your fault. You know,
but not only that, is the mum is then blaming her.
Yes.
And actually saying that, oh, because you joined in, even though it was something that was meant to be fun and light-hearted, because it got aggressive, that's your own fault.
Yes.
So basically, my mum did the same thing in the respects of that when I was younger, when my dad used to hit me when I was drunk, my mum used to say, well, it's your own fault, you should have kept your mouth shut. Same situation, you know, but it wasn't my fault. It's the fact is my dad couldn't actually handle his drink and he shouldn't have drunk.
Yeah.
So, but it's the same thing with there, even though the pillow fight, you know, it was just a playful thing, it should have stopped there. So it wasn't the girl's fault at all, it was his.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Now this one here, the one down at the bottom, it says, both my boyfriend and I were 15 years old when we entered into a relationship that lasted 2 years. Technically, we were still children. The relationship was abusive from the beginning. I was confused as to whether he was being protective or caring. It became physical within 8 months, but I was head over heels in love with him. 12 months later, the multiple black eyes, imprisonment and weight loss, it was time to leave. You know, when I spoke to this young lady and she shared her story, you know, it was hard. It was, you know, even at the age of 21 now, I think she was at, when she told me the story, and obviously this happened when she was in her teens. She said that when she told the teachers at school, or, you know, they didn't do anything about it. She said that they didn't have anything in place. And I guess that's what they say, well, you know, who do you go to? Because she didn't tell her parents, she went to the school and the school didn't help her. And because I just wanted to say, explain to you what she wants to tell parents, and parents have to take notes. You know, I have 2 children. I've spoken to my daughter. You know, she now knows that there's, you know, abuse is not just physical. There's these other elements around it. And she's also come to me and said to me that her friend has experienced abuse. You know, so okay, so I'm very conscious of the time, but she's written an open letter to parents, or or to give them some sort of guideline. So if there are any parents out there that are listening to them, you know, with young children, this is what she's saying. I experienced relationship abuse from my partner when I was aged 15 to 17 years old. However, the emotional aftermath of such trauma definitely outlived the relationship. I don't think I could put a time frame on how long I'd been in recovery, nor do I think anybody should have to. Myself and my partner were of a similar age. He was only a few months older than me, which meant we were technically still children. This made identifying my situation as abuse far more difficult. It may have been if I was older, more informed and experienced within the realm of love and relationships. The relationship was abusive from the beginning, though emotionally and psychologically, abuse is so easy to confuse with protectiveness and care, especially for somebody who did not grow up seeing a happy, healthy relationship between her parents. Things between us became physically abusive around 8 months, and 8 months in, after I had already decided I was head over heels in love and was going to spend the rest of my life with him. And you know, a lot of young people say that, oh, he loves me, I'm going to spend the rest of my life with him. And despite the cheating, the coercive controlling and the manipulation that had been going on for months, I think the fact that I lost all my friends because he decided they were no good for me, I could never love me as much as he did, made it even harder to realize the depth of abuse I was experiencing. 12 months later, with multiple black eyes, 1 week of false imprisonment, and finding myself 3 stones lighter, I decided it was my time to leave before it was no longer an option. If it wasn't for the support of 3 young women, I would have given in to the stalking, the harassment, the endless gifts, the apologies, the tears and the screams. I would have continued to doubt my value. I would never have found my worth. Overcoming relationship abuse and the subsequent trauma is hard, so hard you're grieving the loss of something you know you're better off with. And I think you mentioned that, the grieving situation, I think you mentioned that with that, but that makes the whole situation even more confusing. Why do I still care? Why do I still cry? How stupid must I be to still want and miss this person? This is combined with fear, resentment of the world for not helping you, and frustration at yourself for letting yourself get hurt over and over and over again. Never give up on yourself, she's saying. You are worth so much more.
Exactly. And in that situation, just looking at that, the little bit that you've put there, that they're in the relationship for 2 years, abusive from the beginning, and she thought he was protective and caring. So that was the first red flag, is that the fact that he was being overprotective. So that's when she should have sat him down and said, look, at the end of the day, you know, I'm with you, we're a partnership, we're equal, you know, I don't need protecting, it's not the 1950s, you know, obviously not in that way, but it's just very much that, you know, by having that equal partnership, you get that equal respect.
Yeah.
And sort of also, it sort of puts your foot down then as well to say, look, I'm not going to put up with you acting this way.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it also comes down to as well is, you mentioned in the book as well, the fact is that her parents weren't getting on. So with her parents not getting on, she would have seen that as normalish. Is the fact is that's what happens. And that's what I was trying to explain to everyone earlier, is that when a child sees that and sees that that's okay because my parents put up with each other acting this way, so now I'm going to put up with my boyfriend acting the way he does with me. Yeah, so what you do is you need to put a stop to that.
Yeah.
And because of all these red flags that were coming up, then the next point of call was obviously her to be hit, and that's what's happened.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. Okay. Right. So I'm just going to try and round up our conversation now. And if you are in a abusive relationship, what steps you need to take to start to leave? What steps you need to take to start to leave? Hold on, sorry. The relationship. So here we go. The things that you need to take with you, you need to start making your plan. You know, and these are just quickly some of the things that I put down. And in order for you to remember what they are, just use the word plan. You know, so you have your possessions, your bank cards, your car keys, the clothing, personal photos and so forth. So I got clothing there twice. Your legal documents, your passport, your marriage certificate, your birth certificates, any doctor's details and evidence of abuse. Your friends, make sure your family and friends are around, and if there's a code or signals that you may need, and information about any support agencies that you can go to, and ensure that family and friends know what to do if they see anything that may cause for concern. And also something that I haven't really heard mentioned a lot, when you're in your home, maybe you can relate to this, Maxine, when you're in your home, to identify the high and the low risk areas within the home, because of course we know that the kitchen is a high risk area simply because there are knives, do you know what I mean, and sharp objects. And the low risk area, I don't even know if the bathroom would be a low risk area.
Then you can be drowned.
Yeah, exactly. You know, maybe your bedroom is a low risk area.
Because then you're stuck in your room.
But you've got to find, what I'm trying to say is, yes, there are, you know, nowhere.
It's so hard, isn't it?
Yeah, it is hard,
Yeah.
but we know for sure not the kitchen, simply because of the knives, do you know what I mean? So,
oh yeah, I completely agree with you. And the plan is what I say to people. It's amazing to do that, because it's like a lot of people, they have these thoughts in their head and go, do you know what, I don't want to be in this situation no more. I'm really unhappy, but do nothing about it and just sit on it until it actually happens. But if you actually went to family, told family and friends like what you've got there, you know, that plan's brilliant. Tell family and friends, you know, what's been going on.
Yeah.
Don't be a recluse about it. Don't feel that, you know, embarrassed about it, because at the end of the day, if you're embarrassed about it, then it must be wrong.
Yeah.
So if you know it's wrong, then you know you've got to do something about it.
Absolutely.
But it's like, you know, go to your parents if you've got parents or family or friends or whatever. Take some clothes, take a couple of the kids' clothes, give them some money, keep everything, a bag or whatever, in somebody else's house. And even open yourself another bank account up if you can.
If you can.
And start putting money away every week, if you can do that. And then basically go to the kids' schools and explain to them that it's becoming an unsafe environment, just to look out for things. So you don't want to tell the kids anything, you don't want to stop the husband, you know, or partner or anything, going to pick the kids up from school, because you don't want them to be suspicious. But what you do want, if that does happen, you want a phone call.
Absolutely.
So, you know, you've got to make sure you get all your ducks in a row.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm really sort of like conscious of the time. So just quickly on this bit, to get back to yourself, you know, to start to rebuild your life, and how do you go about doing that? There are so many things that you can do to start rebuilding your life, but I'm just going to quickly start off with little things that are simple to do: daily affirmations, start a new hobby, exercise, or start journaling. As you mentioned, I mean, I do a lot of journaling myself, and it's been very cathartic for me, and I would highly recommend that. You know, and also on here, I don't know about you, Maxine, but when you came out of your relationship, you're feeling worthless. And this exercise here is to say, well, look, write your name down on a piece of paper and write something, a positive attribute about yourself. And I get that you might not be able to do that immediately, because you know, your feelings are on the ground, your self-worth, you know, how much you value yourself would be non-existent. So how can you think that I'm this kind person, or this easygoing person, or this beautiful person? So I know that it would be difficult, but with time, you know, you've got to start finding and feeling things out that are good about yourself, and start off with that, I think.
Got something to add to that.
Yeah.
What you've done now is brilliant. Yeah. And what I would say to you is, as you've got that, so obviously you've got Caitlin, look in the mirror every single morning, right? And say, Kate, I'm kind. I'm assertive, right? Because what happens is, the way your brain works is, if you read something, you go, oh, okay, yeah, I'll remember that tomorrow. But if you actually look in the mirror, it's like you're talking to someone.
Exactly.
And then when you're also saying it out loud, you're also telling your brain.
Yes.
Yeah, because you're telling your brain, it then sticks.
Yes.
It's like, then you're talking, like, if I was talking to you, Jacqueline, it was like, and I was explaining something to you, and I say, right, I've got to get this done. I know I'm going to have to get it done because, you know, if I don't, I'm going to look silly.
And the thing is, I think people might think that it's silly to do at first. Do you know what I mean? And it's not. It really isn't. It isn't. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, at least try it. You can at least try it. You know, and
journaling's brilliant as well. I mean, doing a journal all the time, because it's not until, you know, remember what I said about the hindsight thing. It's when you do a journal, you know, every month go back to that and read that journal, because then you'll see how far you've come over that month.
Absolutely, I can concur with that, because I do that myself. And learn to set your boundaries. Please learn to set your boundaries, and you know, you've got to start building yourself up again, and you know, so that you can have respect for yourself. It's all about self-love, really, isn't it? You know, building resistance, learn about your emotional intelligence, and that's going back to what you were saying, you know, understanding, you know, why did they do that to me? Was it something in their childhood that led them to do, you know, X, Y, and Z, you know? And again, having your own friends, you know, when they try to take you away from your family and friends, you've got to go back out there and try to have your own friends, and do things on your own with your friends. Do you know what I mean? Have a life that's separate from his. Do you know what I mean? And when you come together, you know, that's when your relationship will be healthier and happier, because you're not stuck in each other's pockets. You're not relying on each other to fulfill you or anything like that. Keep your power, I say here, keep your power, not to give your power away so easily. And I think you also have to remember, how were you before you met this person? You may have been this nice, bubbly person, do you know what I mean, that was adventurous and so forth. And then this person's come along and you're completely different. Do you know what I mean? You need to get back, you know, you're an individual, you're not part of him, but you need to get back to, or her, you need to get back to where you were.
Problem is, what happens then is resentment sets in.
Yeah.
And you can't bring things into a relationship if all you've got is each other. You know, you've got to have other people around you to help. Yeah, you've got to breathe.
Exactly. And equity and equality, communicate more, trust and respect.
Communication is the key. Communication is key to everything.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I'm going to draw my session to an end, because I think we're going way off, and I know that people have got things to do. But if you do find yourself in an abusive relationship, please do call the helpline. This is the helpline in the UK. Please search out the helpline if you can in your area where you live. And again, you know, the fact that we can all have happy, healthy relationships. Do you know what I mean? My book, The Relationship Jigsaw, is try not to put pieces in, try to force yourself into situations where it clearly isn't working. Do you know what I mean? But yet you're forcing it. But with just these little steps to put into place, whether you're pre-relationship, whether you're in relationship, or just leaving a relationship and you want to start all over again, do try and talk about these steps. Okay, so that's it. Maxine, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No. Is there any questions that anybody wants to, before we disappear, in case anyone's got something important to say?
I don't know if we might put them to sleep or anything like that. I don't know.
Wake up, everyone.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I mean, I had a good time speaking with you, and I thank you very much for sharing, you know, your experiences, and you know, I hope that you know, people on here and who's going to be watching later on is able to take something away from this. Is there anything else that you might like to add?
No, I know we've run out of time, but I mean, thank you so much, Maxine. Your story is so phenomenal, so encouraging, and I think if anything, it just serves as a warning of what could happen. I mean, many women stay and say, "Oh, just this time. After this, then that's it. I'm gonna do this and that's it." But that could be your last time. I mean, you suffered that terrible injury on your back and the rest of your body, and you know, look at the effect that it's having on your children as well. So I think that's what women need to and men need to be aware of the environment that their children are being brought up in and what their children are experiencing. The physical pains that you're facing can be fixed after a while, but the mental and the emotional pains to you and the children are harder to fix. So rather than bringing up broken children, let's bring up strong men and women. And I think that's what every mother, you know, who's saying, I want to stay for my children, just think, your children being brought up in that environment is not helping them. And that's all I would like to add. That has been so inspirational. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And thank you, Jacqueline, as well, for sharing your story about your family, just to let us know that this is not all about a romantic relationship. Abuse can be, you know, can be siblings, and it can be moms and dads and things like that. So yeah, I really appreciate it. And also you, Maxine, taking us into the history. I think people need to analyze and see, where is this all coming from his side, from your side, and go back and say, this was history repeating itself with you. Then where do we draw the line? Where do we break that chain? We need to break the chain, and the chain stops with us.
That's why I say, when you say about that history repeating itself, that's why I say don't do it for the children, because obviously what's going to happen to them is they're going to repeat that history that you're going through now.
Absolutely.
We want to put a stop to it all.
Yes, we want to break that chain and break it for good. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Okay, so if anyone wants to contact us, please do so via email on domesticpeaceinternational@gmail.com. If you want to contact me, just say my name, Jacqueline Francis, and we have 2 more days left. So please, if you know anyone that might be interested, please, and you can join up yourself if you want to go on another session. If you're already here today, there are 2 more days. Is it 2 more days?
I think it's 3. It's 3 more days.
3 more days. Yes. So
yeah.
We end on Saturday. So yeah.
So we have another session at 2 o'clock in 15 minutes time. So everybody here, please, if you can, just hang about. We're going to come back at 2 o'clock with Brenda Dempsey, and she's going to be talking about finding peace in adversity, another fantastic topic. So see everyone very soon.
Okay. Do you want me to leave this here then, Ayu?
No, I think we can close and then start again.
Oh, right, okay.
But the streaming is not too long.
Okay, cheers. Yeah. All right then.
I'll let you go, ladies, and if anyone wants coaching, just get in touch.
Okay, take care.
Maxine.
See you later. Bye.
God bless you. Bye.